Welcome to the Road Hogs Radio Network, brought to you by theroadhogs.com and Road Hogs Motorcycle Magazine. Let's get the show started. Here's your host.
Boom, 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 boom. Gonna shoot you right down. Take you in my arms. I'm in love with you. Love that is true. Boom, 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 boom.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Classic Chrome. It's Wednesday night on the Road Hogs Radio Network. I'm your host, Buck Carson, and I'm really glad you could join us tonight. We've got a huge audience worldwide tonight. I'd like to thank our listeners in Canada, as well as overseas and here in the States. You're much appreciated, and we hope you enjoy the show. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. Tonight's program is brought to you in part by the Antique Motorcycle Club of America, Cycle Mo's Motorcycle Museum, Wheels Through Time Transportation Museum, Retro Cycle, Carson Classic Motors, Georgia Motorcycle History, the first 60 years, 1899 to 1959, the Rocky Mountain Motorcycle Museum, and finally our newest sponsor, the Race of the Century presented by Motorcycle Cannonball. But don't forget, if you are interested in sponsoring the program, we've got some great advertising rates available. We can do completely customizable media packages for you for advertising. So if you'd like to find out more, email us directly at classicchromeradio@gmail.com. A few announcements for you tonight. Once again, the Wheels Through Time Museum has opened for the 2015 season. It opened up last week, and museum hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. from Thursday to Monday. The museum is closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Admission prices are $12 for adults, $10 for seniors 65 and over, and $6 for children. Don't forget, the Wheels Through Time is also offering two special opportunities this year to win the antique motorcycles in 2015. The annual museum raffle will be held in November of this year. The final prize is a 1939 Harley-Davidson Knucklehead Bobber that was built in-house with original parts in the Wheels Through Time Restoration Shop. Now, this year the museum is also holding what's called the Mega Raffle, where one lucky individual can walk away with the ultimate antique motorcycle, and that's a 1939 Crocker Hemihead Twin. This Crocker is the 8th hand-built engine produced by Al Crocker's California-based motorcycle company, and it's the earliest running example known to be in existence. The discovery of this engine was featured on the first season of the hit television show What's in the Barn on the Velocity Network. Now, you can find out more information about both raffles and purchase your tickets today by visiting the museum website, and that's wheelsthroughtime.com. Now, this weekend in Austin, Texas, come on out to Revival Cycles and check out the Hand-Built Motorcycle Show. Hundreds of antique custom motorcycle builders will be there with their creations on display. The American Motordrome Company will also be on location with the Wall of Death. The event's going to be catered, and it's going to feature a full bar, and it's going to take place this weekend over 3 days, and that's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday it goes on from 6 p.m. to 1 a.m., Saturday from 12 p.m. to 1 a.m., and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now, the address for that is 1100 East 5th Street in Austin, Texas, so be sure to check it out. You can also find out more information by going to handbuiltmotorcycleshow.com. The newly formed Smoky Mountain chapter of the AMCA will be hosting their first general membership meeting at the Barber Museum in Birmingham, Alabama on April 18th from 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time. Anyone interested in learning more about the AMCA and the Smoky Mountain chapter are encouraged to attend. For planning purposes, please RSVP to SmokyMountainAMCA@gmail.com or visit the events section on their Facebook page. Don't forget, everybody, to tune in next week when we have some of the folks from the brand-new Smoky Mountain chapter on board. We're going to do a show focused entirely on the AMCA, the Smoky Mountain chapter, and how you can form your own chapter of the AMCA. So be sure to tune in next week at 7 p.m. Central here on the Road Hogs Radio Network. On April 24th and 25th, the AMCA Perkins Chapter National Meet will be taking place at the Ole Fairgrounds in Ole, Pennsylvania. Come on out to the third national meet for the club and check out the massive swap meet and bike show. You can find out more information by going to antiquemotorcycle.org. To May 2nd, the AMCA Cherokee chapter will be putting on a massive display of antique motorcycles and parts vendors at the Pate Transportation Swap Meet in Fort Worth, Texas. Be sure to come on out to the Texas Motor Speedway and check out the massive field of antique cars and motorcycles on display, and visit with the members of the AMCA Cherokee chapter. More information is available at CherokeeAMCA.org. Thanks to the wide success of previous versions of the Motorcycle Kickstart Classic, our friends at American Iron Magazine will once again be sponsoring a special ride this year for vintage motorcycle enthusiasts. The bikes of all years, makes, and models are welcome. The 2015 Kickstart Classic event will take place from May 28th to May 30th in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, where daily scheduled rides will leave from the Wheels for Time Museum. Riders aboard electric start motorcycles are asked to ride at the back of the group, only to pick up the parts that inevitably fall off the old bikes in front. Besides the ability to ride your classic motorcycle on some world-class roads, you also get to socialize with others who share your passion for old bikes, and you have complete access to the Wheels Through Time Museum for the weekend. Now, registration forms are available online by visiting AIMag.com, and you can also find out more information about the ride by visiting the official Facebook page, and that's found by searching for Kickstart Classic Motorcycle Ride. Now, don't forget, if you have a vintage motorcycle-related event that you would like to publicize, please email all information directly to classicchromeradio@gmail.com. Once again, we're going to go ahead and publicize that there is a stolen Indian motorcycle. A 1920 Indian board track racer was stolen from a storage area just outside of Gardner, Kansas recently. The motorcycle serial number is 77R as in Robert 010. Please contact your local law enforcement authorities with any tips or sightings, and you can also contact Jim Snegas at 785-766-8963 or Jerry Juneman at 913-938-4554 with any more information. So that's going to do it for our announcements and preliminary show stuff tonight. Tonight's program, we're going to review the recent E.J. Cole auction in Las Vegas, Nevada. You folks may remember a few weeks back we had a show dedicated to covering this auction right before. Tonight we are joined by Mr. Ron Christensen, who is the director of the Mecum Motorcycle Division. We're once again joined by Rob Nussbaum of Retro Cycle, Jim Ware of the Rocky Mountain Motorcycle Museum, and tonight we're also joined by my good friend David Monahan. So the recent E.J. Cole collection took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's been called the Auction of the Century. 225 staggeringly rare and historic motorcycles from the personal collection of Mr. E.J. Cole crossed the auction block and headed off to new owners around the world. Many of these machines had never before been seen together and collectively represented the development of the American motorcycle industry throughout the 20th century. The auction produced several record sales prices, which we'll be talking about tonight. A couple examples would be $650,000 for the much-coveted 1907 Harley-Davidson Strap Tank and $775,000 for the ex-Steve McQueen 1915 Cyclone. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ron Christensen first, and then bring in Jim and Rob and David, and we'll kind of have a conversation about the E.J. Cole collection and review tonight. Ron's going to be able to join us for about half the show, and then I understand he's off on a plane somewhere. Ron, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Buck, for having us. I really enjoyed the show a couple 3 weeks ago, and I heard a lot of good comments. You would do a great job.
Well, I tell you, man, it's a blast being able to come on the radio and talk about something that I love. So the show wouldn't be possible without the guests, and I can't thank you enough for coming on and agreeing to come back. Tell us a little bit about your interpretation of the auction in Vegas. There were a lot of record sales prices. You had some amazing machines across the auction block. Was it everything you expected and more, or was it on par or below par?
Buck, I'll tell you, I had so many different scenarios go through my head. I could pick out just about any one of them. Overall, I could go into great detail, but more importantly, Mr. Cole, he was pleased. He'd gone through a lot in that year and a half trying to decide if he wanted to sell and et cetera. He had a lot of people calling him, giving him all sorts of information and how he should do things, and he finally sorted it out, and he said, we're just going to have an auction. It's going to be basically no reserve, and he was pleased. If he's pleased, I'm pleased. Now, I've talked to a lot of my customers, and many of them went away with bikes that they truly came there to buy, and they thought they got a good deal. So you couldn't ask for a better scenario than a happy seller and happy buyers, which is nearly impossible to get at an auction. I was pleased. I thought there were some good deals there. There were some record prices. I think it was very typical of a 225 bike auction that you ran the gamut of good deals, bargains, not bargains. So overall, I was pleased because the customers were pleased and EJ was pleased. So it was a success.
Well, good deal. I guess the question I want to ask is, were you shocked by any of the prices that some of the things went for? You know, there were most everything there was offered for no reserve, but you had, I think there were 8 bikes that I had reserves on them. And those bikes, were you kind of shocked by what they brought or anything in the no reserve section?
You know, I thought they brought, those were the 8 high-end bikes, and those were the 8 that Mr. Cole was very, very attached to, and we could not get him off that. He wasn't going to sign a contract with anybody if he could not put a reserve on 8 motorcycles, 6 old ones and 2 that he was endeared to because they were reproductions that he has produced with his good friends and Lonnie Ism, the 2 reproduction bikes. But the other 6, I think they fall right in where the market was on those bikes. I wasn't shocked at those at all. We were, of course, hoping for the Cyclone to hit $1 million, and if there would have been a second bidder who hung on, it would have been, because the person who bought it was taking it home no matter what. So I guess on those 6 bikes or those 8 bikes, I was not shocked at what they went for, no.
Now, what do you think was the best deal there at the auction?
That's going to be really easy for me, and I'm sure there were some racing bikes that went under the money for any number of reasons, and that'll be another show. But I was especially, well, the ones that I thought went under the money are 2 makes that are really, really close that I really, really appreciate, and that's the Iver Johnson and the Minneapolis bikes. There were some of the race bikes, I've talked to some people that were under the money, but I think if there were some great deals there, I think, on the early bikes would be the Minneapolis and the Iver Johnsons. I think they were tremendous examples, very well restored and correct. I think whoever bought those is smiling right now.
What did you seem to find with the bidders there? And I don't want to ask too many personal questions here, but did you have a lot more folks that were buying right there on site, or did you have online bidders or phone bidders that seemed to be taking the majority of the machines? What really was the majority there?
If it really was a great mix, I would say the floor bidders won out. In fact, I've got that down right here. There were 77 motorcycles that had serious phone bidding, and of that 77, only 22 of them went to the phone bidders. So that means over 50 of them, the floor bidders won out. Now, there were more actual bidding on the phone and proxy bidding, but they fell way short because they were just looking for the good deal. But well over 2/3 of the bikes that had serious phone competition, the floor or on-site bidders won. And that's because they were looking at the motorcycle and they made the decision right there.
Sure, and I think that seems to be the case with a lot of auctions. I've always been of the opinion, my own personal opinion, that it's hard to buy a motorcycle online or through the phone when you can't actually be there to see it and touch it and really inspect it. So that's kind of confirming my own personal suspicions there. Now, what was the grand total of sales there for that EJ Cole auction?
$12,270,000, and that's without the buyer's fee. A lot of auction companies actually advertise that. We do not, because the owner doesn't always realize that price. So it was $12,270,000, what we in the auction business call the hammer price, sold.
Do you feel that was a little bit lower than what you all were expecting, or about on par?
I was hoping for $13 million. Okay, and Cole said he would be happy with $13 million, if he wouldn't have been there for that 2 days meeting and greeting all of the people that came to look at his motorcycles, buy them, and also see him, I think he would have been disappointed. But he was okay at the 12,270. He was hoping for 13, and we were expecting 15 plus, okay? But he came away fine. I came away fine. I really thought it would do 13 million.
Fair enough. You know, Ron, I know you've got a flight to catch here soon, so and I know you said you had to cut out about 7:30. So what I'm going to do now, if it's okay with you, is I'm going to bring David and Jim and Rob into the program, and what I'd like to do is I know they probably all have questions for you, so let them kind of take over the question and answer session, and we'll kind of go from Rob to Jim to David, if that's okay with everybody. All right, Rob, go ahead and take it away.
All right, Ron, after the auction ended and you sort of got a chance to relax, I walked over and you asked me and a few other people what we thought, and we kind of thought the bikes went for retail. There were some good deals, some were over the number. Just give us your thoughts on the retail end of what you anticipated to see and how it averaged out that way.
When I told you guys that I was hoping for 13 million, that is because I was trying to keep Mr. Cole happy. It's really, really important. But, of course, we have to let the seller know we got every dime, and we got to let you buyers know that you stole the motorcycle. So us auctioneers have earned our stripes well because we talk out of both sides of our mouth. But overall, across the board, I think they did fine. I think I would, and I'm just going to pick this, 95% of the people that I've spoken to said we got retail prices, okay? I think the entire E.J. Cole, how long he had it, I don't think those bikes would have brought that kind of money if Mr. Cole was not in attendance. I think he added $1 million. I absolutely do. He truly enjoyed himself there. So overall, I think 75% of them went for retail.
You think that his being there reflects the value of the bike going up higher?
I really do, and I don't know what to base that on. I just, we could go on for 3 hours in this show. And I want to dispel one thing out front, and most of you guys realize that. There were all kinds of rumors up front that we had or Mecum had bought those motorcycles. And I don't know if this is news to anybody or not, but there were rumors spread by a lot of people, mostly the auction companies, that did not get the contract. But we had no intention of ever buying that bikes because of one thing. If we had bought those motorcycles or any auction company would have bought those bikes, Cole would not have been there. And the rumors would have flown, and they would not have brought the prices. And I think you guys will absolutely agree. If the auction company owns those bikes, the whole thing, the air comes out of it. And Mr. Cole actually being there, I believe, added maybe not 10%, but darn close to it. It didn't hurt by any means.
Well, I also have to say that if Mecum would have bought those bikes, it would not have been a no-reserve auction. And I was impressed, that's my opinion, I was impressed that the old man sat through the auction both days, start to finish. He was sitting right in front of me, about 4 rows. He was not out in the hallway. He was not at the bar. He sat like a bitter wood with his friends from start to finish through that auction. And I really tried to put myself in his head. If that was me and my lifetime collection and watching each one of those bikes go away, I'm not sure that I could sit there the whole time, but he did it, and hats off to him.
Yeah, he's an interesting gentleman, and I don't think we're here to talk about him, but that'd be a story in itself. And, Buck, I wish I could get him, but he is a man of few words and many actions. It would be a pretty boring show to have him on, but he is not a boring man. I've gotten to know him for 1.5 years. It took us that long to sign the deal, and I so enjoyed going down there to meet him. I looked for excuses to spend the Mecum money and go down and visit him. I was there for every bike that loaded out. But if you knew anything about Cole, that auction there was no different than a $1,200 deal or a $12 deal. Mr. Cole has been a businessman his whole life. He loves motorcycles and everything, but it was, he wanted to see how everything acted out. And then that goes back to, I was amazed that he was as cordial to so many people because he truly, truly enjoyed that. But he wasn't going to miss this for the world. And I'll tell you, if those bikes would have brought $8 million or $7 million, you would have seen the same face, because he is a guy that understands business, he understands the market, and he understands free enterprise. And there's another story in itself of what he's done. He started out with $1,500 51 years ago, and now he's got thousands of acres all over the world, and he did it all by himself. And that's a little platform. He is an amazing man. He sat there, and again, if it had brought $8 million, you'd have seen no different face on that gentleman, because he is a market guy.
I wanted to say something. You know, you asked about retail,
mm-hmm.
and I think David Monahan could chime in on this, but if we're talking about a panhead or a knucklehead or a JD, I think that we can all agree on what a retail price in the current market is.
Right.
A number of these motorcycles were the only one. And, you know, when you're talking about a factory hill climber or, you know, the only known one of this or that, I don't know that I think that in some realms the auction sets what a retail price would be, but I think, and again, I would throw this to David, a number of those bikes, I don't think that any expert, quote unquote, can walk up to and say, well, this is going to be retail on that motorcycle, because literally there's nothing to compare it to.
Excellent point.
Quick question for you, Ron. Mr. Cole sold his hat and his credentials. Did you get a piece of that action?
Well, you know who bought them, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
David Monahan. You know, he wasn't going to give you anything off that. There was no buyer's fee. Jeff will not pay a buyer's fee at a regular auction or any auction. It just, no, we didn't. But let me tell you, David, did you hear that what Jeff offered him for his bidder's number? And this really blew me away.
I think he bought it for $100.
But did you hear what Jeff initially offered him?
No.
And I tell you, Cole is still regretting that. He offered him $200, and Cole says to him, "It's not worth $200. I'll sell it to you for $100 because you bought the hat." Now, that's the first time ever that I've seen Mr. Cole turn $1 away, or even $100. So that was, and if anybody knows Cole, it would have been. Normally, he'd have asked Jeff $300 for it, and Jeff would have paid it. I know he would have.
Jeff loved it.
Well,
yeah.
David, can you respond to what I said? Do you agree with that a number of the early and very rare machines would be tough
Absolutely,
to ahead of time put a price on?
Yeah, we established what the retail was that day. That was what the value was. All the players in the world were at that auction, and they were willing to pay what those motorcycles sold for. So I think that's a very representative retail price.
I think that's a very fair point, David. You know, it really says a lot because, you know, when you look at, like Jim said, when you look at that auction, you've got a lot of bikes that it's the only one known, or, you know, the only one that's come up for sale in the last, you know, couple decades. So really the market, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I feel that the market might have changed because of the auction, just because when you add those kind of class of motorcycles that have never been auctioned, or, you know, that's the only one out there, it kind of puts a precedent out there for future sales, if I'm wrong.
No, that's exactly right. And there's another point that I'd like to make that probably a lot of people hadn't thought of, but I was concerned that they were going to run out of money because of the auction in January at $7 million and Bonham's at $5 million, or whatever those numbers were. I wasn't completely sure there'd be $12 or $13 million available 2 months after that auction in Las Vegas. So what I would like to point out is that I was not successful in buying anything at that auction. I went to specifically look at certain motorcycles. I knew immediately when I saw them that they would sell for more than I'd be willing to pay. And as a result, I was not successful in taking anything home. But the point being that there were numerous millions more of dollars in that room that could have been spent, but were not.
That's a great point, and I was very optimistic and very hopeful, same as you, David, that in a selfish way I was hopeful, not thinking about Mr. Cole, but thinking about Jim Ware. I was hoping the money was going to run out, and I waited till the last the bike that I put my hand up on was the 1936 Chief, and it was the 10th to the last motorcycle on Saturday. And I didn't stick my hand up a number of times when I should have during that auction. And there were some bikes that once they sold, I said, damn it, I should have put my hand up because that was a good deal. But I waited, and I thought, surely by the end of this thing, the room's got to thin out, you know. And if that Chief goes anywhere from 30 to 35, you know, I'm going to take it home. And it went $57,000. I think I got my hand up once on it before it went past my 30. And
that was the amazing thing, you know. It never did run out. You're right, Jim. Never did run out.
And so again, I saw, like any auction, I saw some bikes that were not worthy go a lot of money. I think they probably sold to people that just decided they wanted the bike and maybe didn't know what they were looking at or didn't care. And then I saw some that were really some good deals and some really solid motorcycles, not flashy and wouldn't catch your eye in a line of bikes, but when you really got down and looked at them, some nice stuff. And I'm talking about 1936 and later bikes because that's what I know. I look at those early bikes and I'm very impressed with them, but I don't really know what I'm looking at. But a David Monahan or a Rob Nussbaum does. But I was impressed, same as you, David, that the market will bear that many motorcycles and that much money in a 2-month period in the same town between those 3 auctions and stay strong right to the end.
Well, Jim, that's a great point. And if I can, I'm going to interrupt here because I know that Ron has got a timeline here. He's going to cut off the airport. Does anybody have more questions for Ron?
And also, I just got an email or a text from the airport, and my flight's been delayed 45 minutes, so I got another maybe 15 minutes here.
Damn.
Sorry, guys.
Damn.
There you go. Oh, no, they just told me it's leaving. Yeah, no, actually, it's already left. I can stay here for 2 shows.
We're going to talk about you to your face then.
Well, but I'm tape recording this, so it's fine.
So does anybody have any more questions for Ron? Since we've got some more time, let's kind of continue our banter back and forth here because we're raising a lot of really good points here and covering a lot of really good material. So,
well, I'd just like to continue on one point there that Jim said that the money lasted right to the end. And I have an affinity for Sportsters and K models, and I just kind of watched that market. And I think the second to last bike, if I'm not mistaken, was a K model. And I thought, well, this is sure to be a bargain at the end. And I think in a retail sense it probably was, but for me it went away like instantly. And I was amazed, just as Jim has said, that the money just never seemed to stop coming.
Yeah, actually that K model was the last bike in the auction, 175. Yeah. It really held true. What did you guys think of the 1912 that brought 200 and some thousand? What did you think of that? The 1912 Twin Harley at 200 and what was it, 215,000 or 220?
I thought it was low.
Yeah, I thought it was under market too.
Is that right, huh? Wow. Because
well, I mean, think about the examples of those bikes from, okay, so really the first year you could probably purchase a bike was 1904, the 03, 04, so really 05. So it's so close to that timeline in Harley's history that there are not a lot of representative examples of those bikes. So the rarity of the bike compared to the price that it brought, I thought was a pretty good deal for somebody.
That's interesting.
David, what did you think of the machine itself, David?
As I recall, it was a pretty nice example. I'm getting it confused with a bike that was labeled a 14, and it was actually a 12 chassis. I didn't look at the serial number, so it's a motor and a 12 chassis. There were a lot of changes, year-to-year changes back then. Predominantly, 12s were belt drives and 13s were predominantly chain drives. And by 15, they've got 3-speed transmissions. So there were so many changes that I looked at so many bikes, I'm having difficulty remembering which bike was which.
Well, and this brings up a point that I brought up at our last meeting on this show several weeks ago, and that is that it is really crucial that a person knows and understands what it is that they're looking at or consults with someone who does. Again, I love those early machines, and I'm very impressed by them, but I will be the first one to admit that I have no idea what I'm looking at. And to David's point, there's so many changes year to year that literally a really correct 12 versus the 12 engine and the 14 chassis with some of the wrong stuff on it, when you're talking about bikes that sell for in the neighborhood of $100 to $200,000, you can be talking about a $30, $40, $50, $60,000 difference between these two bikes, which visually appear the same until you really start looking at those details. So this is where we had so many. The pool of knowledge in that room was just immense. I mean, if it was water, you'd be drowning. The number of people that came to the auction and were in that room that really know certain things. They really know panheads, or they really know the early stuff, or they really know JDs, was just amazing. And I found it to be highly educational just by eavesdropping on conversations that certain people were having that I know really know their stuff, and of course I'm privileged to have friends like David Monahan who I can go and ask questions of, but I think that Dave hit it on the head when he said that every player in the world was at that auction. That's not much of an exaggeration.
No, it was not. Off of that point, that's a very good point, and it's something I kind of want to break into a different topic with. Talking about the number of folks there who were knowledgeable and the pool of history and knowledge that was represented in that room. Now, I was not fortunate enough to be there for the auction. I had a prior commitment. I couldn't make it. But I know all of you guys were there. And it's kind of some rumors that I've heard floating around. And Ron, I don't mean anything to offend you or me by my questions, but it's just some rumors that I'd heard. But something I had heard from a few folks is that there might have been a few number jobs there at the auction on a few of the cases or a few discrepancies. And, understanding the fact that when you have an auction, you're always going to be faced with a dilemma like this of, is everything 100% correct? And it's got to be a tough job for an auction company to set up the entire auction and go through every single machine. But I guess the topic I want to focus on is, were there any discrepancies there, and we kind of go around in a roundtable discussion that were major, and that's just going off of rumors that I heard, not being there myself.
Well, let me start, because I'm the one who, on the last radio show, I'm the one who rebutted, I guess, Mr. Christensen's statement, which, and I'm going to go back to that conversation, when Ron had the floor, he said, this is, there's not another collection like this. The quality is stellar. We're talking about, some of the most unbelievable bikes that, anybody's seen. And of course, he was doing his job, as I pointed out, to pump the auction up. And in large part, especially with the early stuff, he was not exaggerating. It was spectacular. There's no doubt. I think my rebut at the time was, don't be misled. At this auction, as with every auction, we will see bikes that are built out of parts. We will see bikes that have reproduction parts on them. We will see altered numbers simply by the fact that half of the antique and classic motorcycles in the world have had their numbers touched one way or another. And we will see some real mismatched piles of motorcycles. And again, my forte is panhead, knucklehead, flathead, that era of motorcycle. And I can tell you, no rumors, firsthand, there were a number of machines in the room that were, just as I hypothesized, mismatched, wrong frame, broken and welded cases, bad numbers, clearly machines that would not operate, et cetera, et cetera. However, this is any auction that you go to, any newspaper that you pick up, that you look at the bikes that are for sale, any kind of a situation, you are going to find this. And I think that Mr. Cole bought what he liked and what he had a fancy for, and he was not particularly focused on every single machine being perfectly correct. And, I think that the focus by the ISOMs on the stuff being correct was on the early stuff, because that's their forte and that's what they worked on. So that was my observation. If you knew what you were looking at with the pans and knuckles and flatties, there were some that went way high based on what they were. And then there was some really nice stuff that was really correct and original that went, there was a 55 pan that went under 20 grand that was really a nice original example. It had a very poor paint job on it, which was why a lot of people walked past it, but it was a nice bike. So the gambit was there, Buck, including everything that you rattled off. I can firsthand tell you that was the case, and I think that Rob will back me up on it.
Well,
absolutely.
I point to be made that I don't mean any disrespect towards Mr. Cole or Meekum or Ron, and I can definitely appreciate all the hard work that they put into selling Mr. Cole's collection, and Mr. Cole himself for giving up what he had. So just let it be known that it was an amazing collection of motorcycles. But just going off, like you said, Jim, it kind of runs the gamut of every antique motorcycle in the antique motorcycle community has had their numbers touched at one point or another, or they've had things changed, and it just is what it is, and you learn to deal with it if you become a lover of antique bikes. So I just wanted to make that point known. Rob, please continue.
Well, there were a lot of examples of those things that, like Jim said, but I don't think it was overly representative of the auction on a whole. But yes, there were quite a few examples. But on the other hand, there was, I think, and David, maybe you remember, there was a UL motor in a bike that went across the block that could have very easily been purchased, put a knucklehead motor in it, and increase the value of the bike. Do you remember the machine I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Which I thought, we were looking at it, and we were thinking, we thought the price was going a little high for a UL, and then kind of realized what it was. Maybe you could speak to that, Dave.
Well, with a set of gas lines and oil lines and gas tanks and a knucklehead motor, you can add considerable value to a UL, because the knucklehead just has always brought more money. In the car world, a four-door sedan is not going to bring the same kind of money a convertible will. It's that simple.
So if somebody who was in the retail level looking to maybe flip the bike over, get a knucklehead, I don't remember the price on it. For me, it was too high for what I do, since I do this as a business. But maybe in the retail level, somebody got a real steal on that bike if they had a knucklehead motor and the other pieces that they needed.
Well, don't forget, Rob, that those knucklehead motors now are $10,000 to $15,000 just to find something that's been in the swamp for decades.
Right.
So
yeah,
so
I mean, we
the
recently
margins are being squeezed.
Yes, we recently saw a 36 knuckle motor go for $25,000. So, you know, it again. I think that, you know, to your point, Rob. No, it was not overwhelming. The majority of the machines that were in this auction were, you know, excellent examples, and there were some. The shovelhead that you and I looked at, that you had your eye on, Rob, was spectacular. I mean, it was untouched. I think it was it a 68?
It was a 66. It was original paint, and it looked like a screwdriver had never been on on any screw on the bike.
That was absolutely the most bone stock Jenny shovel I had ever seen, and you know, you went from that to bikes that were, you know, put together out of pieces, and again, this is no different than any auction or any purchase situation, and so, you know, my sort of warning, if you will, to the people that were listening, because of course Ron, during that radio show, Ron had brought up, hey, you don't have to be in Vegas, you can, you know, bid online. Well, now you can really exponentially raise the risk factor, as Ron pointed out, by doing a phone bid or doing an internet bid while you're looking at the catalog or looking at the bike through the TV camera. I think that it would be ultimately important to have someone on the floor to talk to who can point things out, because the camera doesn't show when we show up with our flashlights and we're laying on the floor and we crawl all over those motorcycles. And for me, you know, I'm not a big money guy. If I'm going to spend $30K, $40K on a motorcycle, I really want to know what I'm looking at. Likewise, the guy who spent $775,000 on the Cyclone, I assume he knew what he was looking at, I would hope. Anytime you get in a situation where you're buying an antique bike, unless you're buying it from a longtime friend, you always have to approach it with a buyer beware sort of situation. And this auction was no different than any auction that I've been to. But, you know, again, I think to Rob's point, the big bulk of the bikes were excellent machines, and some of them were so rare that, you know, I'll never be in the same room with anything like it ever again.
That's a very great point, Jim. Now, Ron, do you have anything that you want to add to that, or rebuttal, or anything like that?
No, I've enjoyed listening. Everybody speaking their educated opinion, and I do appreciate that. The one thing to please remember is Mr. Cole did buy quite a few of these bikes on his own, but he never has and never did knowingly try to resell a bike that he knew was bad. In fact, he has bought some motorcycles, and the ism was look at them afterwards and just say, this is wrong, you need to get rid of it. So he has gotten rid of it. He did not knowingly do this. We knew that there were certain bikes there that did have some numbers on them, a lot of the racing bikes, which is quite common. But he tossed them out there. He put them at no reserve, and he did hope that everybody did their due diligence to look at the motorcycles. And I don't I can't tell you exactly, but I don't think there was anybody out there that paid double for a motorcycle and will be disappointed down the road. That's what happens at a no-reserve auction. It's going to take two foolish people in one room, and I don't think that happened. There was a lot of educated people there.
Wow.
And I don't think anybody's going to be slicing their wrist when they get home. That's my opinion anyway. But that's an opinion that I have.
I want you to check and see if you set a record with that '66 Shovelhead at $27,000. I think you may. Yeah, I think you may have set a record on Shovelheads there, Ron.
Yeah. I was impressed.
That's what I reiterate. That's what I touched on, like maybe 3-4 weeks ago. If there was something that I was concerned about, it was the shovels and the pans, because he did buy a lot of those all by himself. Lonnie and RL helped him on the early stuff, but all of a sudden he got an inkling he was going to start buying some pans and some shovels. And he went out and bought them. And there were some average machines there, but overall I was really impressed what they did bring.
I want to mention a spectacular deal. Actually, there were two really great deals, and I'm fortunate enough to know the two guys who bought them. There's a fellow in Connecticut who has an amazing collection. He got the Model W you spoke of.
Oh, boy.
On the last show. And then that Survey car that our friend Cole, not to be confused with Mr. Cole, but Cole got a spectacular deal on that white Survey car that was Kansas Police or Dodge City Police, something like that.
Yes. I thought the Survey cars would have brought a lot more money. I was very surprised on that, and I did say that it was the Ivor Johnson and the Minneapolis, but I had really predicted, and so did Lonnie Jr., that these W's or the Model O's, I thought they were going to bring another 50% more. I was very surprised. I predict those bikes will double in value in 5 years. I absolutely believe it. They are so rare and such a great history and a great look to them. Those were two really good deals in the auction.
And they appeared to be pretty much unmolested in original paint, which was very nice.
Absolutely, and the Indian with all of its options on it was crazy. And the other one, it was. Those were two or three of the best deals before the auction and afterwards too.
Were you happy with the price on the strap tank bike?
Boy, I tell you, I was until I talked to a couple of people afterwards, and hopefully he's not listening, but John Parham thought it went under the money. I thought I was. Even when you turn to a person like Bob Chantlin, called it the Mona Lisa, and Bob, I don't think he cares much about Harley Davidsons, but he thought it was one of the finest original bikes in the world. So I was hoping that would do $750 to $850, and I was hoping that the Cyclone did $1 million. So I was happy until I spoke to my informal board of directors, and that's what I called David Monahan. David, I think you remember that, right? Because I cannot know all this. I know a little bit about a lot of bikes, but I turned to David and all the rest of the experts in the field, and they thought that bike was under the money.
Well, David,
what do you think the money was on that bike? The real money?
I thought it should have brought $750 minimum. Cole was hoping for $1 million out of that one. That was one of the special ones. I thought cracking that $1 million figure, and I can go back on the car stuff. When bikes start cracking $1 million, I think the floodgates will open up because it did it on the car side of it. But that $1 million figure is just a tough thing for people to pay for a two-wheeled item. I thought it was under the money. I thought it should have brought $850, and I know the Cyclone would have brought it because the gentleman would have paid for it because he always wanted to have two Cyclones. So.
Well, David, what did you think on those two motorcycles?
Well, when you start dealing in these kinds of numbers, the numbers of buyers that have the wherewithal and the interest at that particular moment are very few. And so I think Ron hit it right on the head. The person who bought the Cyclone would have paid more, but he didn't have competition.
Mm-hmm.
And just the number of buyers at that level is extremely thin. It's so much different dealing with stuff that's $50,000. I mean, it's just not. I mean, it's a different league.
And what did you think about two things? What did you think about the Strap Tank 07 machine, and what did you think about the money that it brought?
Right.
I think that was under the money for what that really was. Bob Champlin hit that right on the head. That was the Mona Lisa of the auction right there. That was the holy grail of collecting, specifically Harley Davidson.
Yeah, I was surprised it went for less than the Cyclone.
Yeah, because the Cyclone, you can duplicate that bike. There are other ones out there. There are some tremendous ones out there, but after looking at two other ones, and I only bring it up because John Parham has one, and I looked at that just last weekend, and if you put those two bikes side by side, his has some great heritage, but when you look at the competition out there, it doesn't have any. And hopefully Mr. Cole is not listening. I don't think he is, but I think if that was put back on the market even a couple of years from now, it will crack that million. And once it does that, it won't stop.
Well, and I think David will back me up because I'm only regurgitating what I heard, but in talking to some experts, the Cyclone was missing the oil pump, and immediately after paying the $775,000 that the guy paid for the Cyclone,
mm-hmm.
plus the fee to Mecum and the shipping, he immediately was going to have a man manufacture an oil pump for the Cyclone so that it would be complete, which was not going to be cheap. And then his intent was to tear it all down and do a fresh restoration on it. So we're talking about $1 million motorcycle by the time the guy gets done.
Hey, David, was that an Indian frame that Cyclone was in? I heard rumors to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Strand motor in the Indian frame.
And you'll find that is pretty true. I think they did build some, but, and I've talked to Bob about this too, it was pretty common back then. I guess it was a much stronger frame. In fact, Bob has even said, or a couple of people have said, that some of them left the factory in the Indian frame because they knew that they were going to be raced and they didn't want them to break immediately. They built a very weak frame. In fact, Bob was telling me that he's heard quotes of, we build engines, we don't build frames. That was an Indian frame, and most of them are. Now, there are some out there, there's some holy grails out there that are 100% complete. I'm not sure if they'll ever be on the market.
Well, that might be your $1 million mark right there.
Well, I believe if that one came out, the virtually brand new one, it would hit $1.5 million to $2 million. That's my feeling, and that's also the owner's feeling. If anybody knows what I'm talking about. So,
well, there you go. Well, guys, we're pretty much hitting our mark for the night as far as time goes. Hopefully, we can do a future show with you all and continue talking about this stuff because we've got a great panel here, and Ron, I love the fact that you're involved with us and there's a lot of really great insight there from your end. So if we can maybe do a future show in the next month or so, that'd be great. I'd love to have you guys anytime. You're all welcome because there's a lot of knowledge here that I know our listeners really appreciate. I know, David, you're going to come on later on this month. We've got a pre-war knucklehead show scheduled, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'm going to have to study up.
Yeah.
Hey, do not be fooled now. David Monahan is one of the most humble and genuine people that I have met in this antique motorcycle world, but this is a guy who he has had his hands in and restored more motorcycles than most people have ever seen. And in particular, I mean, if you want to talk about a real authority on knuckle, he will not tell you this, but I will.
He's the man.
This guy knows every nut and bolt on every knuckle they ever made, inside and out. And Buck, you are so fortunate to have a guy like David agree to be on your show. And this whole group, Ron, Rob, David, I'm just Buck, you also very, very honored to be included in the group.
Likewise.
Ron, I want to congratulate you personally on your success there with the auction. I want to congratulate Meekum because you guys really knocked it out of the park. And any auctions you guys have coming up, please be sure to let me know, and we'll definitely publicize them. And if you're interested in doing a show to publicize it, we can definitely do that as well. In the meantime, you guys be safe out there. Thanks so much for coming on tonight. I had a blast. If you need me for anything else, give me an email or give me a call anytime. That's going to do it for us tonight, everybody.